Hey everyone, welcome to the Seller Growth Podcast. I'm Rob Stanley, Chief Marketing Officer for AccrueMe, and today I've got Rich Goldstein. Hey Rich, how's it going?
It's going well. Hey Rob.
Good to see you again.
You
We're
too.
talking. It's been about a year since we physically saw each other. Crazy time for sure. But
Absolutely.
since that time, wow, a lot has changed, right, Rich? I mean, not just the COVID stuff, but I wanted Rich on to talk about Clubhouse. Now, just so everybody knows, Rich is actually a great attorney, specifically with his law firm and IP type law, if I'm not mistaken, right, Rich?
That's correct. Patents and trademarks.
Yeah, absolutely. And normally I would talk about that, but I've had Rich on talking about that before, and we'll save that for another date. But Rich has been one of the early, I don't want to say adopters, but early on jumping on to Clubhouse and specifically kind of like our Amazon platform or subject matter. And basically has really kind of taken off. And I jumped on Clubhouse a while back, and I'm still kind of just trying to figure it out. So I figured let's get Rich on here and let's talk about Clubhouse and maybe how you could use Clubhouse to promote your products or your brands. So Rich, why don't you kind of kick it off and tell us a little bit about kind of what is Clubhouse
Mhm.
and why do you think Clubhouse makes their platform invite only? And if you didn't know, it is an invite only, everyone. So Rich, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rob. And I've been on Clubhouse since December. And that was kind of like a magical turning point for Clubhouse where it really started to open up. They started it last spring with 2,500 people, invite only. And it was a lot of kind of music industry people, a lot of Silicon Valley people, celebrities. And then kind of towards the end of the year, they expanded it a bit. And I think at the point that I jumped on, there was about 1 million people on, and now I think it's 20 million. So it's really expanded tremendously from the time that I got on. And what it is it's an audio only chat application. That's the generic way of describing it. Basically, it's a place where you can go and listen in to different what they call rooms, and each of the rooms has a title or a topic, and there are people speaking, and you could listen, and you could also become one of the speakers, it's very interesting. It's kind of like a conference call that you can listen into. And so the way that it's organized again is you've got this initial part, which they call the hallway, and that's where you can see the different rooms that are going on. And in each of the rooms, you can see that there are various people in the room that are names listed there. And the interesting thing is that you only you only get to see the rooms that are that have someone in there that you're following. So if you're not following anyone that's in one of those rooms, you would not see it. It's just invisible in your hallway. So I mean, I'll talk about this a bit more later, but the point is that your hallway gets curated by the people that you're following. But you can join those rooms and then listen into the conversation, and at times you can even get involved in the conversation. So some people describe it like talk radio, and they use it like talk radio, where they listen to it while they're going about their day, while they're working out, or on the treadmill, whatever. But you also can be actively engaged in the conversation too. And so the now, just to answer the second part of your question, like why is it invite only?
Yeah.
It's technically still in beta. Now it's beta with 20 million users and with $1 billion valuation, which is one of the fascinating things. I think it's the only app that's ever hit $1 billion valuation while still in beta. So it's kind of given them the room to scale, because there's a lot of data that needs to be transferred to keep these audio chats alive. They've been slowly scaling it, and they don't want to open it up to everyone until they know that it's going to work. So just as an example, a month ago, there was a limit of 5,000 people in a room. So when they got to that limit of 5,000, sometimes the app would glitch, or the audio would slow down or stutter. But they've gotten their act together, they've gotten their infrastructure together, and they now have it where up to 8,000 people can be in a room. But that's just an example. They're looking to scale the infrastructure before they open it up to the public.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what I'm looking for, is to kind of understand it better. I mean, Clubhouse is kind of a new thing to me, and I'm glad what you were saying. So I didn't realize. So step me a little bit through the process. You were saying like you have to kind of be following people for them to show up in your hallway. I mean, this feels kind of like a conference a little bit, like a virtual or audio conference call. And you were mentioning something about being able to speak. So maybe just kind of answer those for us. And if anybody else has any questions out there, please, put them down in the comment area. We'll be happy to answer them, and hit that like and subscribe. But Rich, so kind of walk us through. So I have to be following somebody to see them in my hallway. And then as a secondary question, how do I become like a speaker, or maybe even like create my own room?
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to be following people to be able to see the rooms that they're speaking in, or even that they're listening in. So a lot of times you'll get to see a room that you've never seen before, maybe because one of your followers just happens to be listening in there. And so then if you go into that room and you like the content, you want to make sure that you're following the people that created the room, in order to see something like that again. Like, it just might be luck that you happen to see it, that one of your friends that you are following was in this room. So now to provide some continuity there, you want to make sure you're following the people that created the room. And so generally the way, though, that the room is organized is you've got essentially the stage, which is the top part of the room, where you'll have a bunch of speakers, and it's arranged in a grid. Essentially it's arranged in a grid where you've got like an icon for each individual person. And I'm just going to pop into a room here, see if I could show the camera and turn down the volume. So basically you've got a bunch of people on top here that are speaking. There are people that have a little green, called the green bean, a little green asterisk under their name. Those are the moderators. So those are the people that can bring people up onto stage. And other people on stage are just the speakers. You have a little microphone indicator, and that essentially when you're speaking, you could unmute your microphone and begin speaking. So anyone who's on stage can at any time unmute their microphone and begin talking. And I was just invited to be a speaker in this room, so I'd make that note.
Rich is a popular guy.
I'm a popular guy, and so when I show up in a room, often they will invite me to speak. They don't realize that I'm doing a podcast right now. So these are all the speakers, and then below that, you will find the people that are followed by the speakers. So anyone who's followed by the speakers, and then the whole rest of the crowd. And you can see it keeps scrolling. As it turns out, there are 856 people in this room. And the topic is, I don't know if you could see, but the topic
No, you might need to tell us.
Marketing strategies that work in 2021 so far. So interesting topic. And you got some pretty heavy hitters in this room right now. I mean, you've got Perry Belcher and Matt Andrews and Kayala. So there's some heavy hitters there. Paris Lampropoulos. These are some well-known people in marketing. And so now they're all just having a big discussion about what works in marketing. Right? And you could join in and listen into that conversation. And then again, if you want to speak, sometimes it's that the moderators will see you and say, oh yeah, like I heard her in another room and she's got great things to say on this topic. So then they'll click on you and invite you to speak. And you could either accept or say maybe later. And then also there's a hand raising button. So you can press the button to raise your hand. And then if they see that you raise your hand, then they can invite you to speak from that as well. So that's kind of the pathway that's kind of the dynamics of how it works. You got someone starts a room, people come into the room that are following them. They invite people up to speak. Some people raise their hands to speak. And then you have a big conversation where, like I said, in this room, you've got 49 people on stage that are speakers. Any of them could potentially unmute their microphone and start talking right now. And it's just a matter of etiquette and timing. And it's a bit of an art to running a room to kind of have that flow. Imagine 49 people in a room. They can't see each other because it's audio only, so there's no visual cues of like, I'm about to say something, so you just have to kind of time it, and it works better than you'd expect it to work.
Yeah. So just real quick, everybody, again, thanks for joining us on the Seller Growth Podcast. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section. Rich and I are going to get to how to use, obviously, Clubhouse to promote your brand or your product. We're just trying to get a little background because Clubhouse is still kind of new, even though they're growing quickly. We definitely want to give a little background on how it works. I want to understand a little better because Rich has obviously been on it and I have not had a chance to. In fact, actually, we just had Ryan Kramer popped in and said, Rich, you're not on Clubhouse. Meaning, yes, you were, but he had to pop off for the podcast. Ryan, always great to see you there. Appreciate it.
That's fun.
Yeah. So
I see Ryan on Clubhouse quite a lot too. So
yeah. I had to send Ryan the invite to get him on. So look at, he's already so yes, I'll give that away at the end. Ryan's already posted how to follow you on Clubhouse. So at the very end of the podcast, I'll be sure to pop that up and tell you guys how to follow Rich. But stay on the podcast right now because we definitely have more information coming up here. So yeah, it sounds like you got to get in there. You got to follow people. You probably want people following you. You want to get into some rooms. You want to participate. It sounds like, which is great. I mean, everybody probably has a little idea or opinion and things that you can talk about. So finding a topic of that's interest to you. So like let's say, I mean, we're talking about Amazon. So how do you find those rooms that are maybe Amazon related? Is there just a search button, Rich? And then once you get in there, it's like is there always, are they always going, or are they certain times? Maybe give us a little more info about that.
Yeah, great questions. So first of all, there is no search feature yet. So it's a little bit clumsy to find the topics that you're interested in. And so in general, though, the way it's been is that you need to be following the speakers to see the room. So like, obviously, I mean, there are rooms about Amazon that are hosted by Kevin King, like Bradley at Helium 10. He hosts rooms with Helium 10 about Freedom Ticket. So you'd want to like say, follow Bradley, follow Kevin King. Also, Paul Barron hosts rooms every week, I think like Tuesdays at 7 Eastern, something like that. So he hosts a regular room. So again, it's about following the person. Athena hosts rooms. The Empowery Group, Steve Simonson and Melissa Simonson, they host rooms. So it's like, once you've gotten in, if you follow some of those people, then you'll see those rooms and you'll know who else to follow. Also, when you join the app, it asks to access your contact list. So you want to say yes to this. I know it's a privacy thing, but basically what happens then is if you access your contact list, it gives you the ability to then see the people that you are already connected with and follow them. So if you're following if you have any of those people on your telephone, no one says telephone anymore, on your iPhone contact list, then I'm dating myself once more. Then it'll like ask you if you want to follow those people, and you could choose not to. But my advice is that in the beginning you follow lots of people, because then that's what gives you access to the rooms. So here's the thing: the general rule has been, in order to see a room, you need to be following those people. It's changed a little bit recently in that they've had clubs. So there are clubs where you can follow a club on a certain topic, and then you will also see those rooms in your hallway. Even if someone that you're following isn't in the room, you will still see it in your hallway. So there are clubs on various topics. There are like Amazon clubs, and you can search actually for those clubs and follow them. But yeah, I mean, and previously it was like the Clubhouse organization had to approve the clubs, and they had tens of thousands of applications, and they were very slow to getting around to it. I put mine in early January, never heard back. But a few weeks ago, they actually made it so that users can create their own club in the app. And so I did. I created two clubs. I created one, patenting.club. It's about patenting things. And I also created a club for my podcast, Innovations and Breakthroughs. So I created 2 clubs and I invited people to be members. And then other people, though, have organically found it and followed it. So people searching for things about patents or about innovations, they would see my club and they would follow it. So I've got a few hundred followers to the clubs just from organic. So that's gotten to be better. So then just the overall answer to the question is the way you find the discussions of topics is by following the right people, and also by joining clubs.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I guess I probably need to get on there and start a funding your Amazon business to grow with Growth Capital Club or something to
Absolutely.
get it going. So yeah, that's
there've been a lot of types of discussions too, and like Thrasio has done those types of discussions about exit and exit financing, and as you'd expect, I'm very well attended.
Yep.
But in general, it's kind of a funny thing though, is that if you try to open a room and you don't have a following, then no one's going to know it exists. It could be the hugest, it could be a huge star that you're having as a guest, but if you don't have a following and they don't have a following, then you'll have like 6 people in the room.
Yeah.
But if you have people on stage with you that themselves have a good size following, then it'll be visible to more people. And then then those people come in, and when their following, which may themselves have lots of followers, when they come on stage, their followers will be notified. So a lot of what makes a good size room is collaboration and cooperation with other people that have followings.
Absolutely. Okay, we gotta take a quick commercial break, but stay tuned because we are going to jump more into how to promote your product, your Amazon product on Clubhouse, and how it works. I mean, we've got lots more details coming up here in a second.
This content is brought to you by AccrueMe, the business-friendly funding solution for Amazon sellers. If you're a profitable Amazon seller looking for capital to grow your profits, click the link around this video or visit accrueme.com for a no-risk funding estimate in less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, so welcome back to the Seller Growth Podcast. I'm Rob Stanley, Chief Marketing Officer for AccrueMe, and today I got Rich Goldstein. We're talking about basically using Clubhouse to promote your Amazon products. And Rich, I had this idea, and I kind of wanted to throw it by you. So there's quite a few different rooms, I guess you call them, right? Or clubs in this case. And let's say I sell in like the pet category. I kind of was thinking about I've had people on that maybe sell in the pet category. They get into some of these Facebook groups, and then they go on there and they're kind of like watching, pain points. What are things that maybe are pain points for people that own dogs or cats? And then maybe hey, what would be a solution to that? Maybe come up with a product. What do you think about maybe doing that, something similar like that on Clubhouse? Get on there and listen into some of these rooms of categories maybe you're selling in, and maybe look and asking questions about maybe pain points that they're dealing with that could spark an idea for a product.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I mean, a lot on Clubhouse is about collaboration. It's about getting to know people, and the other side of it is about sharing value. Like people often say, like one of the paths to growing on Clubhouse is by sharing value. And so going in a place where you can share about what works and what doesn't work and what the pain points are, that's kind of what creates relationship with people. And a lot of times the people on there are influencers on other platforms. And so it's a great way to connect with other people around that. And people will see that what you're doing, or maybe even like what your product is, and maybe that will lead to some collaboration. Probably not as much like one-off sales happening, but kind of creating those people that could lead you to your customers is something that happens all the time on Clubhouse. And part of that too is your profile. So your Clubhouse profile, ought to say some things that attract other people toward following you. And we can talk a bit more about call to action and other things that you can put in your profile. But in general, like having something in there about you or about what you do that is attractive to the type of people that you're looking to connect with is critical. You want to have something in the profile. I mean, first of all, when you join, you absolutely need to put a photo. Like a profile without a photo is not going to get followed. unless you're Elon Musk or something like that, right? Like in general, people don't follow an empty profile. So if like someone has their picture in an empty profile, it's like, well, I mean, and they follow me, I'm like, well, why would I follow you back? Because I like your picture? I need to know something more about you to know that, yes, I want to be involved in conversations that you're in. So in general, though, I'd say part of that is showing up in those rooms, giving value, and making sure that you have a profile that really interests people of the type of people that you want to connect with.
Yeah, we actually had a question came in, and let me just read it too quick. They're asking about, are you using Clubhouse to stream episodes to your, or let's see, how are you using Clubhouse for your podcast? Are you streaming the episodes to your rooms? So that's interesting one. And I want to know because maybe I need to do that.
Yeah, great question. I have not been streaming episodes to my rooms, and I haven't seen anyone doing that either. It's like in the sense of having like a recorded episode and streaming it to a room. Like, I don't know who would show up. It just kind of doesn't fit the live aspect of Clubhouse. I mean, people are looking for live conversations. What some people do, on the other hand, is they record a podcast on Clubhouse, and there's various ways to do that. I mean, you could do it with like a Roadcaster, which I happen to be using, and so it's easy to record the episode. But one thing to know, though, is if you want to record something on Clubhouse, you need to give notice. So you need to put in the title of the room that you're recording it. Because otherwise people don't have an expectation that it's being recorded. It's supposed to be pure FOMO content, like here now. If you missed it, you missed it. It's not recorded, it's not replayed. But like I said, one of the things that people are doing is they're recording the episode in the room. But I'll tell you a couple other things in terms of the podcast. So first of all, one of the things I'm doing, like I said before, is I created a club named Innovations and Breakthroughs, which is the name of my podcast. So in essence, it's promoting my podcast, because at the top line of the room is the name of the club. So whenever I open the room under that name, it says Innovations and Breakthroughs and then the title of the room. So it's helping to promote. There are other ways in which I've told people about the podcast, like when I'm in rooms, when I'm talking. That's been helpful. I mentioned it in my profile, and I have to tell you, like, that overall, just from that, the downloads to my podcast are up by roughly a factor of 3 since December. So wow. It's led to a lot of traffic. And there are days when I'm talking about the podcast, and then all of a sudden I see a huge spike. Like, lots of people went and downloaded the podcast just because I talked about it on Clubhouse. So it's very interesting, and I could, we could talk a bit about those dynamics of what happens when you talk on Clubhouse. But yeah, regarding the podcast, it's been great, and it's been very helpful.
Sounds like I need to get on there and talk about my podcast. No, that's great. That's a great tip. And so let's talk a little bit, Rich, about, first of all, hit that like and subscribe, everybody. And if you have any comments you want to leave or questions, please do. We did have a couple come in. I'm just kind of sifting through them. And some of them actually are questions I got coming up anyways for Rich. But so talk a little more about, you're talking about getting on stage, right? You got the, I forget the names, but like people that run the room, and then you get invited, moderators, and you get invited up on stage. So what are some tips to maybe get invited on stage? Like, you talk a little bit about it being interactive and kind of following everybody, but what other things have you seen that maybe give you a better chance to get up there and get on stage and talk?
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, one of the things that gets you on stage is having followers, which of course is a bit of a chicken and the eggs thing, right? I mean, being on stage gets you followers, and it takes followers to get you on stage. But that's not the only way, right? I mean, so first of all, I go into a lot of rooms, and the second I pop in, often I'm invited onto stage, and And I would say most of the time it's because they're using me for my followers, right? They know that inviting me onto stage will then ping all of the people that are following me and say, like, Rich Goldstein is on stage with blah 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 talking about, and then you click a button to come right into that room. So they know that, and so a lot of times I'm being invited on stage just because of that. But the other reason, and this is the one that's more accessible, is just from people knowing you as someone who shares value, shares valuable information. So, um, essentially, that's the way you get started towards having followers, which then gets you naturally invited on stage, is being someone who provides value. And then you might have to start out at first by raising your hand, and then up on stage asking a question, kind of being respectful of the rooms of the room, not just self-promoting, but really forwarding the conversation. That's the type of thing that gets remembered, and then that people then will invite you when they see you again. They'll remember what you shared and remember that you're someone who forwards the conversation, and they'll invite you up there. So yeah, I mean, it's said pretty universally. It's almost a cliche on Clubhouse. People say, well, share value, kind of like, dropping gold nuggets. There's these expressions on Clubhouse which have gotten to be a bit cliche and annoying, but sharing value, like, is something which I think is universal. You need to do that. You can't fake it on Clubhouse. You can't have your social media director create content for you for Clubhouse. You have to show up as a person who can have a conversation, can add valuable things to the conversation, and is authentic. And that's kind of what gets people to not only invite you onto stage again, but to follow you. So that's a path toward getting followers and towards getting on stage, is just to show up and be part of the conversation and be real.
So it kind of sounds a little bit like, Rich, you should probably, you could go into other ones of interest, but you probably don't want to talk about something that you don't like. I'm obviously not going to go into a room, maybe about rabbits or something, and people that own rabbits, and I don't own a rabbit, never have, right? So I'm not going to be able to connect with them, even though maybe I sell a product for that on Amazon. It may be a little hard for me to be able to give advice on something that I don't have enough knowledge in. So it's probably sounds like it's a little better to definitely go into those areas that you have knowledge in. Not that you can't go in there and listen. I mean, I think that's a great idea. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Maybe you go in there and listen and hear what pain points they have, and maybe you can go find a solution. But I was kind of thinking in my head, like, so what kind of ways, now you kind of got all these followers, Rich, what kind of ways are you kind of driving traffic to, let's say, like you were driving traffic to your podcast, but can they convert that to maybe drive people to their product, and maybe not necessarily to buy, but maybe just make people aware that, hey, this product's available? Do you want to do it kind of subtle, or, it sounds like you don't want to go into sales pitch, right? So what do you kind of recommend, Rich?
Yeah, you don't want to go in a sales pitch. And a few things on that. So first of all, in your profile, you can't put any clickable links. So you can talk about things, you can tell about your product, but you can't have like a hyperlink that leads to a landing page or leads to an Amazon listing. But what you could do is lead toward your Instagram. You link your Instagram, and you can link Twitter as well. And then, of course, like an Instagram, you could have your link in the bio, which can lead directly toward anything, to your product page, or to a web page, or just anything else that you like. So here's the like really important tip, is like always link your Instagram for a variety of reasons. Number one, you can't get in contact with other users on Clubhouse directly. There is no direct messaging in Clubhouse. And so you need to connect up your Instagram, and then people can get in touch with you. But you'll find an interesting thing too, is that a fair number of the people that follow you then go on to follow your Instagram. And like for me, I've only used my Instagram for family stuff, before Clubhouse. And I think I had like maybe 250 followers, and I was following like 400 people or something, like just a typical like dad on Instagram. But since I joined Clubhouse and I had my Instagram linked, I'm up to I think like 2,300 followers on Instagram, because people that follow you, if they resonate with you particularly, they'll click through to the Instagram and follow that also, and then they'll send you a message there. So I also get piles and piles of messages and message requests from people that heard me speak on Clubhouse because they have asked a question or they want to get in touch with me. So connecting your Instagram is critical, because that's how people get in touch with you. And then also, again, you can have the link in bio of the Instagram that then becomes, 2 clicks away from someone in your profile to get to your product page or your web page or whatever. One more thing I want to say about that too.
Go ahead, Rich. Yep.
And just in terms of like, well, you're not going to just get up there and pitch your product. Correct. But like, there are people that have done very well with kind of telling the story about themselves and their company, and then gotten people to buy. And like, so there's the OMG Lemonade girl who on Clubhouse, I mean, she's 19 and she's kind of gotten on these stages and she's told about kind of like a struggle and how she's doing this. And like, now she's created this lemonade company and they're doing that and blah, blah, blah. And people are like, I'll buy some lemonade. How do I do it? Right. And she sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of her lemonade, just by being on the stages and coming and telling her story in a way that fits the room. Right. And doesn't like scream of self-promotion. So like, there are ways you could ask questions in rooms about like, hey, I've got this company and like, I'm trying to get more traffic to it. Like, what do you suggest? But meanwhile, you're telling people about what your product is. And so, yeah, I mean, there are ways to get exposure for your product, for your service, without blatantly promoting. And if you just listen in for a while, you'll see how people do it.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, some of the best stories, you hear the story and there's a subtle, like, maybe she's telling a background story on how she started the lemonade and maybe how it became, and, people are interested, right? Like, I'd go buy some lemonade from this person. It's a really cool story, or they're, really genuine person. So I think that's always the best way to approach any of this. But here's a not so subtle approach. I need to cut for a quick commercial break. So everybody hang tight. We do have lots more great information coming up right after this message. All sellers are looking to grow their business. Why not take advantage of the Accrueme.com Grow Now and Pay Later option? Accrueme is not a bank. They truly only win when you win with growth capital funding. What are you waiting for? Head on over to Accrueme.com now. Be sure to mention the podcast. Yeah, so if you head on over to Accrueme.com for a free 3-minute instant funding estimate, be sure to mention the podcast, put podcast in there during the little couple questions that we have, and there's no commitment required. You just fill out some questions and it'll give you an idea of how much we'll fund you for. So once again, I'm here with Rich Goldstein. We're talking about Clubhouse and how to use it to promote your products, and quite a bit about just kind of how to use Clubhouse, because it is kind of a new platform. And I think, like you said, I think this is like a big new thing. I mean, for promoting products, promoting services. But like you said, there's got to be content there. So before we go a little too much further, Rich, why don't you tell us, how has Clubhouse kind of like helped you with your business grow? I mean, obviously you're on there all the time. You're providing great quality information. And then I'm assuming people will come in and ask about, hey, I'm having a problem with this or a problem with that. How has your business grown with using Clubhouse, Rich?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, first of all, I would say it's been a ton of engagement. And that engagement has led to a lot of different things. So like, one of the things is like, in my profile, like, you can request a free copy of my book. It was like the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains patents in plain English. Like, you could request a copy through my Clubhouse profile. And so over the past couple of months, I've
real quick, Rich, I have that book. So just so everybody knows, I have Rich's book.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so over the course of the past couple of months, I've sent out about 200 books or so. That's a lot of engagement. I mean, that's a lot of long game playing for me as well. It's like I send out a lot of books because I'm passionate about educating people about patents and about IP. But some of those people come back around to become clients, so that's worthwhile. I've gotten many direct clients too from people that I've been on stages with and moderating rooms with. So part of it has been through my profile and people selecting to talk with my team, or to get a free copy of the book or going to the podcast. There's been that way in which the engagement helps, but it's also been a lot of great relationships created. So like I have had people, and you asked about the podcast before, I've had people on my podcast that I met on Clubhouse that I never would have had access to before. Like I had Mitch Thrower on, and Mitch kind of created active.com that sold for 1.1 billion. I met him on stage on Clubhouse, invited him to be in my podcast. And then that led to Joe DeSena, who founded Spartan Races. I had him on my podcast too, all because of Clubhouse. And a bunch of other people, like people I'm hanging out with, are people that I never would have met before. So again, there's like a ton of engagement that way. And I'll just give you an example, just shows how organic it could be. So I had someone who became a client today, and they told the person on my team that the reason that they contacted us was because Perry Belcher said I was one of the best IP attorneys in the space, or something like that. And I actually remember that was yesterday. I was in Perry does a Monday morning marketing room that I'm often on stage with. And he just mentioned that. He's like, oh, and Rich is here too. Rich is like one of the best IP attorneys in the world. And just him mentioning that apparently led to this person saying, okay, I'm going to contact him and become a client. So it's kind of that type of thing where like we often look for those, like, well, what's the path? There's the landing page and then this and then the upsell. But sometimes it's just that organic mentions. And I hear that people often talk about me in other Clubhouse rooms and say, oh yeah, you've got to talk to Rich. And like Rich does a room, patent questions and answers every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Like you have to join his room. And so that type of thing has led toward, towards business, towards engagement, and that's another thing just to want to mention is having a consistent presence. So I do a room every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time to answer people's questions. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of like having other people engaged in the room is what works. So it's like having the relationships where I have other people with followings kind of show up to hang out with me. They're not patent attorneys, but they're hanging out with me. And then that helps other people see the room and it helps me have more people attending that get to know of me and then follow me and possibly contact me for business. So it's a whole like relatedness relationship thing that really works on Clubhouse.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I mean, I think you're right. The best way to get, without being spammy is when people do mention you because maybe a question came up regarding IP stuff and it's like, oh yeah, go see Rich, and coming from somebody else, it's not like you're self-promoting. It's like somebody else sent them because they know that you know how to handle this and you know how to do it. So I like that. That's always a good way to, let it happen naturally because maybe there was a question or something came up. So Rich, also, I read something about this. I did a little bit of research on Clubhouse and things that are going on recently. And I have to read this because I kind of had to write it because I grabbed it from one of their lines. I guess recently they announced a development of an influencer program. Are you familiar with that? And have you been included in that yet?
I am not familiar with that in particular, the influencer program. There's a bunch of programs happening there. I mean, the only one I could think of when I hear influencer program is that they created a program to give stats and analytics to some of the people that are kind of higher level influencer status there. Let's say it's like been a pilot program to kind of share certain data that's not available now for other people. Like, so when I run a room, it's useful to know how many people were in that room and how long they stayed. And actually there's third-party tools that provide that data. But I think, Clubhouse has some additional data that's not available to the external tools. And I think they're providing a pilot program for influencers that give that info. That's the most that I know, unless there's something more specific that you'd heard.
Yeah, I just kind of read a blurb about it, and I was just kind of reading up about it. They didn't go into too much detail on what exactly included. It just said there was like limited invites to this influencer program, and so it sounds like they're beta testing it maybe to see if it's something they're going to open up to a bigger audience. From what I kind of read. So Rich, here's a big question that I've had, and every time I talk to a lot of people who are on Clubhouse, it's kind of like I always ask this question because it's like, when do you find time, Rich, to do Clubhouse? You're a busy guy. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that even getting a hold of you to get you on the show, we were going back and forth, and I know you were just swamped. I'm always busy doing work and stuff. So when are you finding time to do this? And maybe a little advice on it. Did it when you first did it? Did you kind of just go hardcore and just like 24/7 almost on it, or are you now kind of scheduling? Hey, these are the times I'll be on.
Yes. Well, first of all, it is highly addictive. If you're the type of person who enjoys interacting with other people, enjoys connecting, enjoys conversations, either like listening or being a part of conversations, then you may find it to be extremely addictive. So there's the addictiveness aspect to it. And then there's also if it's beneficial, I should probably be spending more time on it for that sake, right? So a little bit of both for me. But back in December, when I first got involved on Clubhouse, I kind of meandered around for the first week or so. And then right after Christmas, there was this room called How to Grow $1 Million Business. It was run by a couple of people, Kate and I'm blanking on her name. I feel terrible in the moment, but basically that room went 24/7 for I think 14 days. And in that room, like there were lots of people on the stage, like marketing, business type people on the stage that then kind of consistently hung out on stage. And like, every time that they came around to you and say, it's like, okay, like Rich, could you just introduce yourself? And I do like a 30-second, I'm Rich Goldstein. I work with entrepreneurs to help them protect their brands and products with patents and trademarks, blah, blah, blah. I would notice I'd get like 40 more followers because there'd be like 1,000 people in the room. So I would, and like Grant Cardone would show up in that room, and like, Kevin Harrington and like Ty Lopez would show up, and then maybe the audience would spike, and like it would, it was kind of crazy, like the quality and the level of people that were showing up. And so spending like it was difficult to leave because, you would miss things. And also, you get gaining a following that way. And it's kind of hard these days to gain a following in the same way that I and other people were able to gain in those early days. It just doesn't work the same way anymore. But yeah, so then I began to realize that that I was also getting a lot of engagement, a ton of messages from people interested in doing something related to patents and trademarks. So I was like, this is great. So I spent a lot of time, and it definitely was way overboard. It was way close to 24/7. But then there's the social aspect too, where there are times where, like, there was a time back in January where I found myself in a room with a small room of like 15 people with people I didn't know, but these are all like influencer level people. And then they're asking me about patents and trademarks. And then it was like 3 a.m. and I'm like, guys, I have to go to bed. And they're like, no, you can't go to bed, and I was up till 5 a.m. And by the end of this, we had decided that we were going to do an actual room on patents and trademarks the following week, and that they'd all agreed to be part of the moderator panel. I was like, this is awesome. So we scheduled it and we did it. And then I actually kept that same Thursday slot for the past, I think it's been like 12 weeks now that I've done that room. But it came from a random late night conversation. And so these days during the day, I'm on it like part of the time. Sometimes I'm working and I'm kind of listening to it too. And I go and they invite me on stage and I'm kind of listening, making sure that if they address me by name, that I'm not like accused of squatting, which are people that kind of, they get on stage to collect followers, but they're not really there. They're not even listening. So never want to be a squatter. But yeah, find time, and I spend a good amount of time supporting other friends' rooms these days. Like I'm not necessarily it's not necessarily my subject matter, but like they're there for me in my room, and so I'm there for them. So it's time consuming, and I guess the bottom line is you have to find what works for you. Is it creating real business value for you or not? And be real about that. Because it will always be a combination of what's the business value and then just what's the enjoyment or FOMO value. It's a terrible place for people who have FOMO because you don't want to leave, right? So if you're a FOMO person, Clubhouse might not be for you because it's then extremely addictive.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and maybe that's one of the reasons I need to stay off it because Rich, you as you probably know, you put me in a room and I'll start talking to everybody, and I'll just keep talking and getting into conversation after conversation. So, but I love it, especially if it's a topic that I'm passionate about. Everything Amazon or e-commerce or online, shopping and sales and stuff. I mean, gosh, I've done all that and way in the past, and of course, coming from the iPhone world myself. But we got a couple questions just came in. Hang tight 1 second. We do need to take a quick break from our sponsor, Accrumi. And again, when you head over there to Accrumi, make sure to mention the podcast.
This content is brought to you by Accrumi, the business-friendly funding solution for Amazon sellers. If you are a profitable Amazon seller looking for capital to grow your profits, click the link around this video or visit accrumi.com for a no-risk funding estimate in less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, so welcome back to the Seller Growth Podcast. And today I got Rich Goldstein. We're talking about using Clubhouse to promote your brand and kind of how Clubhouse works. And because you got to understand how it works before you can get in there and promote your brand. And again, it's not really about necessarily promoting your brand. What you might want to do is, depending on the product you're selling, get into a room that people are talking about, maybe a subject matter where there's a way you could introduce your brand and say, hey, I heard you had this problem. Here's my solution. If you want to take a look, you want to do it a little more casually and more like informational. You want to definitely not just sit in there and start plugging your brand. So we did have a few questions come in, Rich. Let me pull those up. Give me 2 seconds here. So we do have a question that was asking about if Clubhouse has gotten any bots or spams. I don't know if there's a way to do that, Rich. You were talking about, you were saying that you can't quite really communicate directly to somebody, but is there sort of is there any discussion boards or anything? Again, I haven't been in there too much myself. So have you seen anything like that yet?
Yeah, it's rather light on the bot or spam category. But I think that there are some spam followers. Like I've seen examples of this where, if you look at someone who's got a room and then the audience is like just classic, like AI followers, right? With like kind of made up names and like the random pictures, and like you can tell the pattern, where it's kind of like a fake Instagram followers. I think it's a very, very small minority of things, and of the followers that are there are the like spam followers. But I mean, there's definitely spam on Instagram, and like people that I've connected with on Clubhouse, I will get like spam, like, hey, we can get you verified on Instagram, like just the usual stuff that stem from having my Instagram handle on Clubhouse. But it hasn't been like a big problem. It's pretty minor at this point.
Yeah. So we do have another question that came in, and then just so everybody's aware, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. And I will be giving you information on how to get a hold of Rich at the end, and also how to follow him on Clubhouse. So stay tuned for that. But Rich, we did have a question come in. They were kind of asking, like, is Clubhouse here to stay, or do you think it's going to be kind of a trend or fad that maybe will get replaced or go away at some point? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, like, will it go the way of Friendster or MySpace? I mean, like something that was really hot and popular now, someone else comes along and they do it in a different way, and that catches hold, and then people jump onto that platform. So, I mean, who knows? Like, who knows if it's going to, and the same thing could have happened with Facebook, right? I mean, back around, I think 2006 is when they really it started to take hold. I could be wrong, but that's 15 years. So where the other platforms lasted for a year or two, they've had pretty great staying power. So will Clubhouse be that? Who knows? I mean, for now, it's pretty awesome. And, essentially it's only been open to iPhone users and only in select countries. So I think that it'll be a matter of two curves meeting each other, where like maybe the engagement by a certain crowd will drop down, but as they open it up to the rest of the world, then that could be plenty. So it's kind of like, right now, I think there's 20 million users, and let's imagine only 1 million of them are active. That still provides an amazing experience, right? And that's still, like 1/8,000th of the entire world, or maybe 1/5,000th of the people that have smartphones, available. So it's like, even if that engagement goes down, but the other factors ramp up and it becomes more available, it could still be very, very popular and useful.
Yeah. All right. Well, we did have one more question come in, and actually it was for me. So they were asking about the criteria for an Amazon seller to qualify for a loan from Accrumi. So first of all, we're not a loan, just so you know. We're definitely here to help, finance or give you capital to grow your business. So if you are a seller, even if you're outside the United States, if you're selling on Amazon USA, head on over to accrumi.com, fill out a 3-minute form. That's the fastest way. So that's one of the basic criteria. There is a few, but I don't want to go into too many of them. But the easiest way is just go fill out that form. And if you're selling on Amazon USA, it doesn't matter if you're located outside the US. There is a few questions that will ask some of the requirements. So head on over for that. And Rich, thank you so much for providing all this great information on Clubhouse. Once again, Rich Goldstein. So the way you get a hold of Rich on Clubhouse is at Rich Goldstein. And also the other way you can do it is head on over to accrumi.com. We do have the podcast section on our website. You can watch this video if you missed anything or came in late. And also in the description area, I actually have Rich's website, and I will go right after I'm done here, go put the Clubhouse link in there, or the at symbol at Rich Goldstein. So that way you can get a hold of Rich on Clubhouse, and be sure to follow him. Be sure to follow myself, Rob Stanley, because I am going to definitely get on there. And first person I'm going to make sure I'm following is Rich, which I think I am, but I will definitely make sure that I am following him and a few others. Thanks everyone for listening in. And again, I had Rich Goldstein from Goldstein. I'm sorry, Rich, is a Goldstein Patent Law, Goldstein Patent Law. And thanks for being on Seller Growth Podcast. And once again, everybody, we're on live every Tuesdays and Thursdays, so be sure to tune in. Rich, great information. Thank you so much. Like that was really good. I mean, you actually filled in a lot of gaps for me for Clubhouse, and I'm going to definitely get on there and start participating more. Hopefully I'll jump in a room with you at some point if it's something that makes sense. And if not, I'll at least come in and listen. So thanks again, Rich, for being on with us.
Awesome. My pleasure.